Good evening. This week, GIBLINE has an exclusive interview with the Spanish Foreign Minister, Senor Fernando Moran. On the 5th of last month, Spain lifted all restrictions on Gibraltar, and a negotiating process was started aimed at overcoming all differences between Britain and Spain over Gibraltar. This, of course, as you know, included discussions on sovereignty. Our correspondent in Spain, Clive Galt, spoke to Senor Fernando Moran, who's been described as the architect of the new Spanish policy on Gibraltar.
Minister, would you agree with that description for you, the architect of a new policy?
No, I will say that, of course, the socialist government has made a different policy about Gibraltar. I have been instrumental in this policy.
What do you describe the policy as? You have given it a special phrasing. Would you describe that?
Well, I will say that following the same policy, ultimately wanting to recover sovereignty about Gibraltar, we have put the emphasis in good relations with the Gibraltarians and taking very much at heart the interests of the population. And trying to come to an agreement with Great Britain can be accepted by the people of Gibraltar.
You are trying to integrate both populations on the human level, aren't you?
Yes, we are trying socially and culturally and psychologically. I think there are many links between the people in Gibraltar and people in the Campo, and it is quite irrational to be so separated, so alienated from one side and the other. So we are trying not to gain the goodwill of the Gibraltarians, but to make conditions on the intercourse in any activity more fluently and easier.
So you think the policy of the past has created an isolation between Gibraltar and the Spanish hinterland, which has produced a situation of hostility?
I think there is a fact that since the 60s, the intercourse between the population has decreased very much. And they have some difficulties, and people in other sides of the gate were more separated. It have not been a complete cut between the two populations, but they have been more difficulties, and it is bad on a human level, and I think it is bad in the political level also.
So do you feel you have corrected the mistakes of the past?
Well, we are trying not to correct the mistake of the past. Let me to say that the measures taken by the previous governments have been correct from an international point of view, international law point of view. But psychologically and politically, the effects have not been very favorable.
You have always said, since you came to the foreign ministry in the new socialist government, Minister, that you had a great respect for the Gibraltarians. That has come over across very well on the human angle. But what does that mean politically?
Politically, it does mean that since the beginning of the 19th century, it is not possible to make a deal with anybody about the helps of the population. It is impossible. It is undemocratic. Of course, the only parties entitled to come into negotiations about Gibraltar are the British government and the Spanish government. But we must, both of parties must take into account the interests and feelings of the people in the rock in Gibraltar.
How is that applied politically? Do you recognize the Gibraltarians as such?
That applies in many respects. When we have explicit our position, we have always thinking in terms of integrating the territory of Gibraltar into Spain, but not converting the Gibraltarians into Spaniards. That means that we are ready to accept the people there, to keep their nationality and customs and language and way of life. That is one important point. And these conditions on these qualities, citizenship, language, culture, to be embodied into a status, special status. It does mean that we are very much aware of the psychological and political circumstances in Gibraltar. That doesn't mean that we consider that the Gibraltarians have a right to self-determination. That is quite another thing. But for the rest, I don't think that any deal between the two parties will be a good one and a worthwhile one without, if that goes against the deep feeling of the people there.
Talk to me about self-determination for the Gibraltarians, Minister. Why not?
because you know that even with a proper interpretation of the Constitution, that doesn't amount to the self-determination right of the population. That is something that is very clear. It has been very clear too in the different resolutions of the United Nations. And before law, I think that there is not something strange to say that the Gibraltarians have not the right to self-determination. But they have the right, and Spain they takes note of that, to express their feelings. And that I have said that if they give me Gibraltar in a plate without the feelings of the Gibraltarians, it would not be a very good deal in due course to Spain. It will be a valid deal. It would not a very good one.
So you would not like a Gibraltar, Spain would not like to have a Gibraltar with a hostile population, is that what you mean?
Not at all. It will be a very bad business for us. We will have to have a Gibraltar. I hope to have Gibraltar soon, but with people there accepting the situation as a valid one, and the one we do not jeopardize their position in the everyday life.
Don't you feel that after 300 years in Gibraltar, the Gibraltarians themselves, the man in the street, feels that he has a right to his home, to his land?
I think that psychologically it's normal for them to say that is my home, and they want to do in my home as I wish. That is true, and we must accept it. But before long, and thinking about the future, I think that many Gibraltarians will consider that the accommodation in terms of sovereignty is compatible with keeping their mastery of the
You
house.
have basically come up with a new thesis over Gibraltar, which is separating the concepts of sovereignty, i.e. territorial sovereignty and personal sovereignty. And that sounds to the Gibraltarians as a very clever move on your part to separate us. We want the land, but we don't want you. We think in Gibraltar, however, that the land goes with us. So how do you describe the new thesis, separating territory from people?
I think it is not a new thesis. I think that you can always have considered the situation about the territory and the population. I think that the people are entitled to think I don't want to change my way of life. I don't want to change my allegiance to the British Crown. And I feel myself British, or I feel myself British Gibraltarian, what they feel. And I think in order to get or to find a way out, this is not to separate one thing from the other, but to approach the thing upon the basis of the territorial integrity of the country. Because I suppose the Gibraltarians of goodwill can accept that it's very, very, very awkward for Spain, and is diminishing the possibilities in any field, politically, strategically, for Spain have always been a negative factor to have a colony upon their territory.
But to you, decolonization means Gibraltar being handed over to Spain, does it not?
I think that decolonization, as decided and ruled by the United Nations, is a mandate to Britain and to Spain to solve the problem in terms of reintegrating the territory into Spain and safeguarding the rights of the people there. I think what is the meaning of a civilized way of understanding decolonization.
Don't you feel in any case that we're always stumbling over the concept of sovereignty? Spain wants sovereignty, Britain says it's theirs, and the Gibraltarians, the third party in between, are trying to have a say as well.
Yes.
Don't you feel that the concept of sovereignty is changing, Minister, that with the united Europe, which seems to be coming slowly but coming, that Spain will integrate as well, and we will all be one family? Then surely this concept of British, of Spanish, of French is going to end. We're going to hold a common passport. Can't the solution come that way?
I hope it will be so. I am in favor of an integrated politically Europe. But the trouble with sovereignty is an absolute concept. At the same time, if you apply it to a given situation, it can become a stumbling block. So the question for Spain, that is something we cannot renounce, is to recover the territory, because it's so important for us, not only psychologically, but militarily also, and from any point of view. But at the same time, If we use absolutes and say, let's have the territory with everything, and you say population wishes and population feelings must have decide upon sovereignty, we come against a stumbling block. And this stumbling block has given way to very difficult positions, for example, the closing of the gate. So we come before an absolute. You must respect the absolute value of some concept. At the same time, you must try to flexibilize the consequences. And these consequences, in my opinion, is to respect the rights of the people there, even to self-government.
But within the Spanish Constitution, of course.
Without the Spanish Constitution, but I wouldn't say exactly, it is my personal opinion, any kind of autonomy has been provided for in one part of the Constitution. Because in the Constitution, the chapter 8, they consider granting self-government to a certain extent to people who consider themselves Spaniards, and they are Spaniards. And I am not thinking in terms of the Gibraltarian becoming Spaniards. I am thinking in terms of the Gibraltarian keeping their nationality and their cultural identity, but living in one Spanish territory. That is to put myself clear.
But do you want Gibraltar, does Spain want Gibraltar because of national pride or national interest, or perhaps because of the military strategic value of Gibraltar, the control of the straits, to be more specific?
For both, because you know there has been always a scar in Spanish history, because some part of the territory, her territory is in foreign, I wouldn't say alien, foreign hands, and at the same time, of course, being a colony and a fortress in one appendix to the Spanish territory, which is Spanish territory, has decreased very much our strategic value. And we have resented this fact in any field. While wealth in the international affairs has decreased, while self-esteem has decreased, so it's so important for us. But I think that we have added to this analysis is the consideration, to taking into consideration the feelings of the people there. That is what is new, and I think that is constructive.
But on the strategic sense, and I must bring you back to this, one cannot help think of Gibraltar always with the defense aspect of it. It is an important base, the key to the Mediterranean, the control of the straits. Surely, if Spain stays in NATO, it will be easier for Spain to have a hold on Gibraltar.
I am not quite sure. I'm not so sure. I think that about Gibraltar, from a military point of view, we can share responsibilities with Britain, but I am not so sure that it is necessary for us to come into the military structure of the NATO in order to do so. Because what is Gibraltar? Gibraltar is not a NATO basis. Gibraltar is a British base in which NATO have some facilities, and there is a sub-command in Gibraltar. It's called GIBLINE. But that amounts for some connections in between communications, but which is important from a military point of view is to control the harbor and at the same time to control the fortress, and it does not belong to the NATO. That is British, and we hope it will be Spaniard someday.
But that could be developed. The fact it is British and Britain is in NATO could be developed and used by NATO. Surely then, if Spain does remain in NATO, it would be easier.
Yes, let me tell you something. Which is important for Spain is not that Gibraltar is a foreign base. It is that it's not a Spanish base or basis.
But if Spain is in NATO, and there are guarantees that Spain remains in NATO, then as a Spanish base...
For example, you remain in NATO and you give us control of the fortress and the stores and the harbor. But I don't think coming into NATO will give us access to these facilities. I think that we can think in other terms. We can share use of the bases by Spain and Britain, either in NATO or outside NATO. It's quite different. And I wouldn't say strong words, to be cheated, and say, for example, you come into NATO, you have some access to the facilities in Gibraltar. That is not the question. The question is that from a military point of view, the existing foreign base, either British or NATO, in a Spanish territory, against the will and the not to be not allowed by the Spain is diminish the strategic value of our country.
But Minister, if Spain does leave NATO, surely Britain would find it more difficult to have an agreement.
Of course, yes, I will take into consideration. That is not, we are not discussing now the question of leaving or not NATO. To be more precise, to renounce to the Treaty of Washington, because there is an alliance, we are in the alliance. Another thing is to integrate ourselves into the military structure. But we are not discussing now this question. We are discussing which is the importance of, from a military point of view, of Gibraltar to Spain or to Britain. For Britain has been very useful, and for Spain has been always a nuisance. But the point is how to reconcile the common interest, the two interests, the interest of Britain and the interest of Spain, to find a solution.
Going back from the military aspect, the defense aspect, to the political aspect, Minister, your recent talks in Brussels, an agreement in Geneva with Gibraltarian participation, what are your general comments? What went on?
I think it has been very positive and very satisfying for everybody, for the two parties, Spain and Britain, and for the representation of the people of Gibraltar. We have assisted, attended in Geneva as a part of the British delegation. I think that we have created a better climate. We start to know each other. I got a very, very, very good impression from the Minister Principal, Mr. Sir Joshua Hassan, Chief Prime Minister, Sir Joshua Hassan. And I think that they had, I hope, got impression that I had not any tricks myself. I am not a tricky man. I'm an open and candid man. And we were telling them exactly as I'm telling you now, that I will never hide the fact that Spain wants to recover Gibraltar, but we haven't never hidden the fact that we consider very much we are the feelings of the people there. And that is a very, very, very important factor, and we must take account of this factor.
But at the talks, just the same, you met the British Foreign Secretary, Sir Geoffrey Howe, on your own. What went on in that hour, Minister?
We discussed the whole thing, and we explored from our side some ideas. We will facilitate the whole operation. I must say that, of course, Sir Geoffrey Howe has stick to the well-known position. We are not agreeing about sovereignty. We are agreeing on discussing sovereignty. But if you want to tell me so bluntly, Sir Geoffrey Howe has not sold out the Gibraltarian position at all.
But you haven't told me what happened. I mean, did you discuss sovereignty as such?
We have put my case on sovereignty, upon sovereignty.
And no Gibraltarian representation, of course.
I had put the case before the Gibraltarian representation also.
Now tell me about the Moran secret proposals.
I have no secrets at all. I am an open man.
You know there is speculation that you have a secret plan. I'm sure you are on a personal level, Minister. But politically, there is speculation, as you well know.
My secret is no secret. My secret is to find ways to recover the sovereignty upon Gibraltar territorial, and at the same time to respect the wishes and the feelings, mostly the feelings, because sometimes the wishes are interpreted in Gibraltar as self-determination right, which I don't consider exist. The feelings and attitudes of the people there.
But can't you tell me something about your proposals, a lease for 45 years, a Hong Kong type deal, a condominium, joint sovereignty, interim agreement? These are ideas that I put to you.
From Hong Kong there are differences. We are not communist and we are not capitalist. We are capitalists, both of us, more or less. And even Mr. Bosano was said, we are socialists. We are living in a capitalist open market economy. Well, we say, without joking, that, for example, in Hong Kong, it was very important from the Western side to guarantee the economic position of Hong Kong, being different from China. To China, it was very important to have an open gate to the westward. That is not the situation in Gibraltar. And in Hong Kong was already a lease expiring at the end of the century. Hong Kong itself, of course, the situation was exactly the same because it was a treaty with not period fixed in advance. But we were thinking in terms of recovering the Spanish sovereignty, but having given time to adjust the situation of the people there. And after a period of negotiations in which the relations between Spain and the United Kingdom and the relation between the Spaniards at both sides of the gate, the Gibraltarians and the Spaniards, will improve very much. That needs time. That needs also to know what will be at the end of the road, at the end of the day, in order to adjust ourselves to the new situation.
Minister, you have mentioned Mr. Joe Bossano, the leader of the opposition in Gibraltar, and a socialist like you. Your relations with the Socialist Party in Gibraltar are not very good, are they?
Well, I don't want to interfere, the Spanish government doesn't want to interfere in the domestic affairs in Gibraltar. And we are dealing with any government will be there, especially, of course, Mr. Bossano have some ideas about economic policy. They are similar to us. But at the same time, he has taken an attitude toward the opening of the gate. It will be, I don't think it is very, very acceptable for us. But I have a great respect for both Mr. Bossano and Joshua Hassan. I have met once Mr. Bossano in Gibraltar, and come there for a TV program. And that is the only time I met Mr. Bossano. Mr. Bossano, as many people in Gibraltar, have relations with people in Campo, but Mr. Joshua Hassan also has these relations. I will repeat that from my present capacity of foreign minister, I don't want to pass judgment about the domestic affairs, political affairs of Gibraltar.
But one would expect better relations between the Spanish Socialist Party and the Gibraltar Socialist Party, don't you think?
You know, sometimes we have very good relations with the conservative parties. And even we are improving very much our relations with the British Conservative Party. I must say the Prime Minister in Britain has always been very open to Spain, to our Spanish democracy. And once she met Mr. González, and I think they got both of them very good impression. So we can have a very good relations with people within definitely in some economic or social questions.
Would it be true to say then that you have better relations with Sir Joshua Hassan than with Mr. Joe Bossano?
I will say that I had more relations with Sir Joshua Hassan because I had met twice Sir Joshua Hassan. Once in Gibraltar, once in Geneva. I had met just once Mr. Bossano. So in that numerically, or from a point of view of the times we have met, we have more relations with Hassan.
You don't want to talk very much about Gibraltar politicians and Gibraltar politics, and I respect that, Foreign Minister. But very recently, something happened that created a great big controversial situation in Gibraltar. And that was when you addressed the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Spanish Parliament. And there people said, and in fact a Hansard was produced, an act of parliament or a copy of the text of parliament was produced by a Spanish paper, by Aria, which said that you had told the parliamentarians, the Foreign Affairs Committee, that you had guarantees from Sir Geoffrey Howe from Britain that the Gibraltar Parliament or that legislation would be passed in Gibraltar above the heads of the Parliament of Gibraltar, of the House of Assembly.
I had no guarantees at all of this question, on this question. I never, Sir Geoffrey Howe told me that don't worry, if the House of Assembly passes a resolution, the governor has the right to, the capacity to overcome this position. No, I have no say so. I say that if you go into the constitutional text, the rights and the competences of the governor are very much, but I never said they had any guarantee from the British party that the governor will intrude into the affairs of the Assembly and to decide for the people of the Assembly.
So you deny this categorically?
Yes, I deny that. Had no guarantees at all.
If it was true, you would deny it also, would you not?
No, it was not true. I say that if you go into the text and you see that and the Governor General has very extended faculties in the colony. But I had no guarantee from the British to make the governor acting in some way in order to overcome difficulties on the House of Assembly.
Minister, as there is progress with Spain over Gibraltar, don't you feel that this will have to be played low-key because it can affect the situation in Ceuta and Melilla?
I think I will come into this question of Ceuta and Melilla and the differences. I don't think that the low-key is the proper word for it. It's a delicate matter, the war relations to Gibraltarians. So more than to be low-key must be, I think, sensible. Must be sensible both parties in order to improve the relations on both sides.
Looking towards the future then, Minister, what can we expect on the situation in Gibraltar and at the frontier? Any progress in air communications, in culture, in links between the Gibraltar government and the Spanish government, or perhaps through the Junta de Andalucía? Can you give us an idea of how that is going to develop?
I think we can expect quite a lot of cooperation, starting for air communications, perhaps, and for tourism, and for cultural relations, either both in the regional level with the Junta de Andalucía and between the authorities, and what is more important, among people.
Finally, Minister, do you believe that you have laid the foundations for a Spanish Gibraltar?
I hope so, but I hope at the same time not to be resented, all my opinions, by people we respect so much.